Okay, thank you, Miss Sue.
Hello, hello, and welcome to Results Reflection Series. This is an interview series that highlights continuous improvement efforts with the enterprise happening all across the state, as well as spotlighting the individual subject matter experts of those efforts as they share their perspectives and experience throughout their project or initiative. We will hear about their achievements, barriers faced, and lessons learned along the way, if applicable. I'm Talia. I'm a senior performance advisor with Results Washington. And today I am so excited to hear from and speak with Eliza Craig with the Washington State Women's Commission. And she is here to share about the Commission's work with the Activate 3.8 Pay Equity Tour. I'm representing Eliza.
I know, it's great. It's great. I like that shirt best too, so.
Oh, it's so comfy. And in addition to the message, it's very comfy. I love it. And I love that you all had so much swag on this. All right. Well, let's kick this off by telling our listeners a bit about you and what you do and what your commission is responsible for.
Absolutely. So, again, I'm Eliza. I am the Communications and Outreach Coordinator for the Washington State Women's Commission, which is sort of all of our messaging, including with initiatives like Activate 3.8, keeping the public up to date with what we're working on, and sort of being kind of a window of transparency so that our constituents, all 3.8 million of them, have access to information about what we are doing on their behalf and inspired by them. The Washington State Women's Commission is in the Office of the Governor. We have existed since 2018. And what we are responsible for is representing and being a voice for the girls and women across Washington state to state agency leaders and to legislators. So, kind of not an advocate, but being in the know with communities and in touch with communities and being the direct voice for them. And our makeup is we have 9 commissioners who are women who are governor appointed from across the state, and they each have different areas of expertise, different backgrounds, different communities, and they can kind of be the eyes and ears in areas of Washington that we don't go as regularly. And then in addition to that, we have now one executive director, and I have to get this right because we're growing, four, no, 5 full-time staff, which is a huge win, especially going from just a staff of 2, including the ED, a little over a year ago.
Wow.
So that's,
Just let's pause and reflect on that for a minute. You did so much work with just the staff. Did you say of two?
yeah, it was it was just a staff of 2 for a few months there, and
Serving 3.8 million?
million, yes, yes,
Amazing.
yeah. So that, and as our team grows, we're just getting stronger and stronger, and able to do more for our communities, which is really exciting.
That is so wonderful. And it's just awesome to really put it in that perspective that you are the voice for women and girls in Washington State. And that's just really awesome to even have the intention to build a commission and create a commission for that purpose. So just in advance, I'm excited to hear all of this, but thank you for being that voice for us. That's wonderful. All right. Well, can you tell us about your initiative and, you know, Activate 3.8, the Pay Equity Tour? What is this initiative about? And if there a problem that you were trying to solve? What, if you could tell us a little bit about that? We want to know what the issue was, why was it important to address, and then what this initiative is all about.
Yeah, so Activate 3.8, just the basics. It means activating the full economic potential of Washington's 3.8 million women. That's the name, kind of catchy, kind of eye-catching, but what it's really about is that we know that when women have access to greater economic stability, they have greater access to healthcare, better health outcomes, to safety, to resources. And so we understand that by working from different approaches to increase women's financial stability and security and their families, that they in turn will have more secure and stable lives. And our three areas of focus of the commission are health, safety, and economic opportunity. Because we're such a small team, we realize that if we can dial in our staff efforts on this economic focus, it will kind of also address these other pockets that are so crucial to women and girls' well-being in the state. So that is kind of the premise. And then the issue that we are working towards measurably solving, or at least coming close to solving, or having any kind of success in, is um, bridging the gap, the gender wage gap in Washington state, which is one of the largest in the country. In 2022, it was actually the second largest in the country. We're still getting information from the 2023 American Community Survey about what that looks like now. But that gap is $19,000 a year for all women. And we know that for Latino women, it is $35,000, and in the upper 20,000s for Black women and for Native American women in the state. And so this is a number that we can see. This is the number that people hear and they instantly understand what that means. Whereas some of the really key problems that feed this gap, such as unaffordable childcare and lack of access to childcare, and harassment in the workplace, those are issues that aren't as tangible and easily understandable by the public.
Mm.
So, with this being our overarching, measurable kind of issue, we can message our campaign appropriately while working to address the very serious issues that we know are feeding this gap.
Wonderful. Thank you for that breakdown. I have a follow-up question for the listeners that hear about these gaps, to kind of bring just a little more understanding to it. Is it like, for example, what is causing the gap? Is it like a man and a woman both have the same title and the same position, but she just has that much lower pay? Or is it the fact that men are getting better, higher paying positions, and women are stuck in lower paying positions? What is it that is making up this gap?
Absolutely. So we know that there's so many different reasons behind this gap. One part of the gap is the occupational segregation piece, meaning that from a really young age, because of access or because of social messaging, and a lot of it's because of access, women, and especially women of color, end up going into fields that are vital to our people, like healthcare, like education, but that are horrifically underpaid. And
Childcare.
yes,
Yeah.
and where benefits are really not quality. And we know that men are overrepresented in fields like science, tech, engineering, math, trades, construction, industries that are thriving in Washington State. We have like Boeing, Microsoft, Amazon, and that are really high paying and offer high quality benefits. And so, because of the overrepresented representation of women in underpaid jobs that are, again, so important, and the overrepresentation of men in these higher paying jobs that are also important, we see a gap. We also see a gap because of women's disproportionate childcare and care responsibilities, like elder care as well. So, because women are often the ones sort of caring for children or caring for elders, there's a lot more pressure and a lot more women who leave the workforce,
Mhm.
some by choice, which is fantastic, and a lot not by choice, but
Right.
because it makes more sense to stay home with the kids rather than, it makes economically more sense to stay home with the kids rather than send them off to childcare.
Yeah, because that could be like another rent, right?
Yes, it would not make sense for their incomes.
Yeah.
And so that isn't a choice. And that also, not only are these women then losing out on income for the amount of years that they stay home, when they try to go back into the workforce, the skills that they've been using for years, such
Hmm.
as management, emotional intelligence, skills that we know are so important to the workforce,
Hmm.
aren't really seen as important,
Mm.
aren't seen as experience that's relevant to that job.
Mm.
And that leads to greater disparities, and the income loss continues to accrue and accrue and accrue over the career span of this woman until she's hundreds of $1,000s behind a man in the same career that she maybe started in, um, or what she maybe would have had if she had access to childcare that was accessible and affordable. And so that's another piece. And as far as sort of the equal pay for equal work kind of phrase, we know that that's still happening. We know that women are still being paid less than men working in the same job as them. We know that men are offered raises and promotions at a higher rate than women with the same level of experience and degrees. We know that that happens, but that's not the entire story. Um, and so those are just some of the reasons why we have this really substantial wage gap in Washington State. I know that our childcare is one of the most expensive in the country. And so that's kind of part of why we're here.
Thank you so much for going into that. Just hearing you speak on that really like gave me a visual, to put to the numbers and the disparity. And I also just want to put in a plug in our September public performance review with the governor. We did hear from the Women's Commission on this topic, and in those reviews, they share visual slides. So if anybody wants to see visuals of what Eliza is speaking to, as far as the data and the breakdowns of it, this is such an interesting topic. And so we do have more coverage on this. It's not quite as long as what we're going to spend time with Eliza talking about today, but you will have visuals to go along with it. So you can find that on results.wa.gov, on our public performance review page. And it was the September review of 2024 for community engagement. Just wanted to put that plug in there because I do think you gave me such a great visual, but folks may want to hear more and see more visual on that. So thank you for that.
Of course.
Um,
And lots of great content from our peer commissions that we work with as well. So
Absolutely.
totally.
Oh yeah, that performance review was packed with really impactful projects and initiatives from commissions all working together. Um, okay, so yeah, you covered that. This was totally important to address. So how are you working to solve this problem?
Yeah, so this is going to be years in the making. We know that systems change happens slowly and really painfully slowly for the communities impacted, but it just takes time. What we are doing, sort of boots on the ground, and what is the most visible to our constituents right now is what you're representing, which is the pay equity tour. So this is one small piece of the entire puzzle, but what the Pay Equity Tour is a series of 10 events around Washington State. And really, we mean around, like we are going to, the southeastmost corner. We just came from Vancouver. We are going across the state. We do not want to just be on I-5 corridor, but these events are they take into account the current economic conditions of a city, the population of a city, who's being underserved, and then what the future economic opportunities will be for girls who are currently in whatever age group we are choosing to work with at that event. And the goal of the event is to connect them with women working in industries within STEM, construction, and trades, so that they can see themselves in that workforce in the future.
That gave
And
me chills.
oh, it's really, I mean, it's really special. We just came from our event in Vancouver, so we've got two down, we've got eight to go. And in Vancouver, we are working with um, careers in manufacturing and in construction. And we had middle to high school age girls and non-binary students. And at first they were kind of like, whatever, we don't. it's that age, they're like, whatever. And then by the end, they're just smiling and excited and asking so many questions and engaged. And we we took a survey to get their perspectives, and the number of students who said that they were not interested in careers in manufacturing or construction dropped by half
Wow.
just in a few hour event,
Wow.
which shows it goes to show, like, if we just put energy and focus into young girls and tell them that they can and tell them that women already are, um, small actions even like that can make a change. So that's what these events are for. Beyond that, um, we have three other pillars that focus on early career, so that entry into the
Mhm.
workforce, and understanding that there's so many different paths. There's apprenticeships, there's pre-apprenticeships, there's traditional higher education programs. There's many paths into the workforce, and supporting those and making sure that those are equitable and accessible. Then we have mid-career, which is where we kind of talk about childcare access to those wraparound services so women can stay in the workforce should they want to. And then the end of career and retirement piece, where we hope to see more women in leadership positions, and where we also hope to see women with retirement savings, which starts a lot earlier. But we know that women are retiring a lot later than men, and that they're retiring with less. And with our population aging out of careers, we have a very vulnerable group that is growing and that needs our support. Um, so those four areas are the whole campaign, and they're going to take serious and focused policy change,
Mhm.
serious partnerships and collaborations. That is going to be huge. Program, and that will lead to program and service development. So there's a lot that is going into this, and we have a really committed staff who's excited about the project.
You do. I
And
can vouch for that. Your staff is awesome.
thanks. So is yours.
We work
Um,
closely together in the same office, so I
we
see
do.
how jazzed you are about the work you do.
And ditto. And so that is kind of our scope and our approach.
Man, let me just tell you, as you're talking, the work you do is so amazing that I'm sitting here thinking, I wish I had that. Like, to talk to young girls before they graduate. Um, now, how many of us graduate and don't really know or even have an idea of what we want to do, let alone what we could do, right? Like,
Yeah,
that's not usually the case. Sometimes, college aside, sometimes it takes some years to really get an idea of what you might be able to do out there. So I feel like starting at that age range and actually giving the exposure to the information is so huge. So it doesn't surprise me that the numbers of non-interest dropped so much because sometimes exposure to information is all it takes. And you're clearly inspiring these girls to see themselves in positions they probably wouldn't have seen themselves in before. And the reason why I would imagine they haven't is because how likely is it that you see females in those positions? And so you just kind of out of sight, out of mind. That's not our deal. So I think that's awesome. And I'm sitting here thinking, geez, I wish I would have had that. But then also for the working mothers. Oh my gosh, that would have been helpful at some point in life as well, to really just be exposed to the information on wraparound services and all the options that are out there. And then when you talk about the aging population, I know that I've heard a lot of women be concerned with as they get older in age, not being marketable anymore, not feeling
yes.
as marketable as their male counterparts. Um, just because, not that they lost any skill, but there's I guess, a thing around a woman in her older age. They're looking for the younger crowd. And so to know that you all are intentionally doing work to, improve and assist all of these three major categories of females, that's so awesome. I'm excited to hear about this, and I'm so happy on the behalf of like women in Washington to know that this is work that is really you all are so thoughtful about it. Um
And there's so much, I mean, so the Vancouver event like there's the women who are trailblazing in those industries who
Mhm.
have, again, they found their way there without these events and without these programs. And it's them, and then it's countless grassroots and community organizations who are already doing this work. And we're just lucky enough to get to tap into them
Mhm.
and do some more connecting and convening, but
Great
and
point.
learn. So
No, that's a great point because you think about it. Sometimes you'll see kids around the same age, and one has so much more, um, I don't know, natural motivation or inspiration or something in them that says, "Hey, I want to go this direction," and another kid the same age may not have that. And sometimes it could be as similar or as simple as who they have access to, right? Like maybe they've got super successful people in their family that showed them, "Hey, this is really possible." And then this person may not. And so the fact that you are providing that connection, you're showing them, hey, meet and speak with these people. It's like a mentorship program. And so I love that you're making that, you're creating that bridge. That's very impactful. That's major. So I think, I can I can really already kind of picture this, but to go a little bit deeper, how could this work create more equitable work for Washingtonians, equitable outcomes for Washingtonian females?
yeah, there's so many different there's so many different points throughout a woman's career where things could be more equitable. But starting just like really early, what you just said about some girls may have successful women in their family, successful people in their family who tell them that they can do this. And that a lot of that comes down to privilege, access, historic conditions. Is this somebody who's from a white family? Is this somebody from a family who doesn't speak English as their first language? So inequities start in the cradle. And so we know we might have a student starting out here as far as privilege, and then one starting out in a completely different place. So it would just be great to see, and I think this work is really, really already happening, but to see those equities start to write a
Mhm.
lot earlier and
Yep.
without so much individual effort, like so
Mhm.
much of that work being on the person who was born into conditions where in American society they have less access.
Mm.
Um, and so that starts with efforts and funding in childcare and then before childcare. That
Mhm.
starts there. And so it's, I think this question is a big one because there's just so many ways that things could be improved. But we just came from a really big conference of people working in STEM specifically, and that work is being done. Like the conversations are being had, and we are just so excited to work in a state and for an administration who really values equity and genuinely shows up for it. And it's not a buzzword, and it's not just something to say. Um, so we're really optimistic.
Yeah, and I'd say this whole initiative is about equity. Like that's the whole point is to make it more equitable. So thank you for that. Well, what's the next step in the initiative, and what is your commission's next steps and your plans for the future?
Yeah, so a lot of our next steps are kind of working in tandem with our two new staff. So we have an incredible program manager who is working to create a living and moving and updating map that aggregates resources like wraparound services, like scholarships, like apprenticeship programs in one place for women and improving it can be really difficult to wade through all the options of government resources and to fill out the forms and to know what's what.
Mhm.
So what we're working to do is make that process a lot more streamlined and easier for women, so that they can have access to the resources available to them. And that is a big project and one we're really excited about. Again, we have 8 more cities to do for the Pay Equity Tour over the next 2 or so years. And each of those events sparks new collaboration, new ideas, and new approaches. So that's really thrilling. And then a lot of this work happens in the legislature, which we, as state employees, have a lot of privilege of having access to. And we then have a really huge responsibility to use that access appropriately.
Oh, did I lose ya? Let's pause a moment. Sorry about that. We had a quick tech glitch, but we are back.
I'm like, sorry, Talia, 1 second. Is that it? Was my background unblurred before?
Oh my gosh, you're asking the wrong person. I was so focused on you and what you were saying, I wasn't paying attention. You feel free to blur it if you want. I
I
think it
think
was blurred. Okay.
so. I was like, that feels aggressive to see my closet.
Yeah, I think we're good to go now.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. Okay. All right. Ready.
Um, no, this is great. I love it. So yeah, you were talking about your next steps.
Yeah, so next steps are definitely focusing in on some really specific actions in the legislature this year. We have also submitted a request legislation to add solicit to our RCW, which is a really small change, but what it would do is give us options if in a year like next year our budget is really tiny, and it can be tiny from year to year, and we don't have a lot of the resources we need to get this work done. We can reach out to organizations with similar interests and solicit additional funding, um, which would be really helpful. So that is something that we are doing this year in the legislature, along with a number of other bills. So our approaches are kind of this map and increasing access to resources and services that we know exist in the government and beyond. These events and these touch points with community across the state, and working with legislators and our other state agencies.
This is really powerful, ongoing work for a while. Do you see this as like what's the plan that you see as far as how long this work will last? Is it just ongoing for the foreseeable future? Is it like a 5-year plan, or what is your commission's take on goals?
The only so our main timeline right now is just our pay equity tour. We will be wrapping that up within the next year and a half, 2 years.
Nice.
But beyond that, we will be setting goals and determining measures so that we can continue to assess whether or not our efforts are actually having any success. And again, choosing the gender wage gap as kind of our main area of focus, that does give us some opportunity to assess our efforts yearly, which is really great. And obviously, those changes won't just have to do with us. We're a really, really tiny agency, but it offers some kind of measure. And as far as how long this work, I think for a very long
As
time, this
long as
work,
it needs to be.
as long as it needs to be, and this work will always be, whether it's Activate 3.8 or not, this
Mhm.
work will always be a part of our focus as the Women's Commission. And as long as there are still disparities in women's financial security and economic freedom, then it will continue to be a focus for us.
Outstanding, thank you. Okay, well, for the last question I have is, in retrospect, what would you say would be the biggest challenge that you faced during this effort? If there's anything you would have done differently, or just what are some lessons learned or some golden nuggets you can share with other folks that hear this that are inspired by this this heavy lift you're taking on, and just any lessons learned that you can share would be very much appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. We know that those who are closest to the issue are
Mhm.
often the ones with the answers.
Mhm.
And while we don't want to leave our communities overburdened when they are already doing so much, we want to be sure that our efforts are informed by the communities that we aim to serve rather than prescribed to them.
Yeah.
And so I think that we weren't 100% aligned with this when we first kicked off, just because you get over that hump
Yeah.
of working, working, working to a deadline and getting it over the hill. And now that it's over the hill, we have the room space and are continuing to build the connections to be sure that work is community driven and community informed,
Mhm.
as government work should be, right? Those are the
Right.
people who elect our officials and pay taxes, pay our salaries. We are public servants. And so that is the focus. And yeah, so I think that's kind of our how we need to move forward and how we are moving forward.
A simple message and refresher to us all is consider the voice of the customer or constituent, that the service is there to benefit, right? I love what you said. It shouldn't be prescribed to someone, but actually driven by their needs, their perspective, their experience. So that's wonderful and very along the line set of lean. So thank you for that. We are at the end of our interview, so I really appreciate your time spent with us today. And again, on behalf of Washingtonian women and girls, thank you so much, Eliza, for all the work you and your team do on our behalf. It's just amazing, and we just appreciate you and your time with us today. Thank you.
We appreciate you. You have a great team and you do really important work. And it's nice to get to connect outside of the office. So
Yeah, it is.
thank you for making the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Bye, everyone. Thank you.